So, 4 typical roles children may use to adapt to stress in their family situation. So remember when these came out, maybe you don't remember, but we were still thinking the nuclear family was normal, and we were assuming heterosexual. Nuclear family, that is mom and dad and biological kids. And so one of the things that came out of this data, for some reason, where everybody else, the normal heterosexual family, was having 2.3 kids. I don't know what a 0.3 kid looks like. Don't ask me. But alcoholics tended to have 5. So I guess they split the difference and went 4. And this usually happens in birth order, but it doesn't necessarily, so I'm just going to basically give you the straight model and comment on it later. So the first one is sometimes the first kid, the super coper, family heroine. Notice the spelling of heroine. It's female hero or hero or hero. It's male. Basically, what happens is, if you were looking at this, I used to have in high school a handy-dandy little mobile in which you had 6 people, 2 parents, and kids bouncing. And so then you add a little bottle, and so that weighs that down, and so it elevates the codependent, and boom, 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 right? So what happens in the family is that mom, let's say dad's the alcoholic. So mom basically is the codependent wrapped up with taking care of dad, right? So what leaves the oldest child becomes mom for the rest of the family. And they take over the role of the parent in home, the non-alcoholic parent. In the outside world, they see a workaholic, a successful perfectionist person. This will be the captain of the football team. This will be a star athlete. This will be a straight A student. This will be an overachiever. And part of what's driving that overachievement is shame at what's going on at home that they can't reveal because of those rules. Don't talk, don't trust, don't feel. So basically, they're super into looking good. So that's often the oldest child, but not necessarily. Next is the scapegoat. Scapegoat, basically, for those of you who are Christian-oriented, this basically dates back, this meme goes back to biblical times in which the scapegoat is the goat you sacrifice because of your sins. So God won't, mess you up. You kill the goat, offer the goat to God. See, this is for my sins. Scapegoat. So, scapegoat. Often the second child, because the super coper role is taken up, the only way I can make a difference or be seen in this family is they take the blame for the addict's use. They can act out, get into crime, they can get pregnant, they can get others pregnant. They're often involved with alcohol and drug or criminal activity. You see, you're driving your father to drink. Why can't you straighten up and fly right? The lost child. So literally, this person basically seeing this whole situation in the family, a lot of pain there, a lot of conflict, a lot of yelling, screaming, broken things, whatever. The lost child copes by withdrawing into a private world. This person will often have an invisible friend. Have a rich inner imagination. They're the person in a classroom who nobody notices, including and especially the teacher. They just kind of float through. And see, this is, basically it's a stressful situation. So one coping mechanism, coping mode would be withdrawing entirely. And then what's called the family mascot or clown. Now, because there's a lot of stress in this family, what happens is they often cope with stress by laughter. That lightens the seriousness. In the blues tradition, we would talk about laughing to keep from crying. And there are a lot of comedians who are in this situation and actually talk about their family situation. As this Richard Pryor, Carol Burnett, that guy who was on Fox, Titus, lots of people who were family mascots, family clowns, doing their comedy. Now, I want to illuminate something that basically this model was originally developed for with alcoholism within nuclear families, but we found that it has become adapted to other major stressors as well. So take, for example, systemic discrimination. Let's say, since I'm on this racist kick. So let's look at racism, right? How many of you have seen the movie Schindler's List? Okay. In Castlemont High School in Oakland, a white history teacher, decided to show Schindler's List to a mostly black classroom without telling them about what the Holocaust was first. How do you do that? I don't know, but they did it. So if you've seen the movie, come to a part where this Jewish woman who's a prisoner in this Nazi death camp, she's an architect. So she's saying, the foundation's wrong on this bathroom. If you keep building, it's going to collapse. So the Nazi colonel shoots her in the head. The kids saw that and laughed. Big uproar. Oh, they're so insensitive. These black kids have no... So they decide to have an assembly, right? And they invite Spielberg up from L.A. to talk to this assembly where, he's going to do a Q&A after the film. And, so he's doing that. And Sister Go stands up in the Q&A section and says, "Thank you for coming up. This whole thing was blown out of proportion. When we saw the scene in which the woman got shot in the head, we thought it looked fake. So we laughed because we've seen our friends shot in the head in front of us, and it didn't look like that. Oh, and by the way, aren't you the Steven Spielberg that did the Indiana Jones movies? So this movie was shown to us without telling us about the Holocaust. The Holocaust is bad, but we weren't told about it before we were shown the film. So all we knew was Steven Spielberg was coming. It was a Steven Spielberg film. So in Indiana Jones, in the first Indiana Jones, when he comes up with a guy with a sword and he pulls out his gun and blam, ha, ha, ha. And then the second one where guy comes up, and goes for his gun is not there, ha, ha, ha. So we just thought, blam, it looked fake. We've seen the real deal. We laughed. Spielberg didn't have nothing to say. It's not about racism. We've seen people killed in front of us. It wasn't funny to us. But we thought you were doing this for laughs. So if you think laughter can be a maybe inappropriate response to stress, but the fact that some neighborhoods have guns and gun violence and access to them and experience that violence is a matter of addictive systems in operation. Okay? And your reaction to that stress would be to lighten it up. So again, this model still works outside of alcoholism. Sorry to get heavy, but it's real, right? Addictive systems replicate all kinds of things. So the chief codependent is usually the non-using spouse role. They shield the addict or alcoholic from the consequences of using. if they use 2, then they help protect supply. Because obviously, if I were going to use that little mobile model, it actually gets even more chaotic if both mom and dad are using, plus a number of the kids, or everybody. So both using, of course, they have the dynamic with 2 addicts or more. So if they get in recovery, they can, that is the chief codependent, if they get in recovery, they can serve as a healthy nucleus for the family system to coalesce around. So you don't have to be sick with the addict, you can model health. So what happens with codependency is it often reinforces weakness. You need a weak addict to look strong to be a helper. So often what happens, and we see this happening when the addict finally gets into recovery, people don't know how to react to them, which sounds weird, but it happens frequently enough so that we say just look out for that and begin to tell your own truth. So with those the super coper role takes over the role of the parent in the home. The outside world sees a workaholic, successful perfectionist, represent the family. They're straight A student, star athlete, go-getter. Success is used to cover shame, and recovery can mean opening up to dealing with feelings of inadequacy, driving a push for success. This is not to say that you shouldn't strive for success. But understand that you don't have to be successful to be okay. You can be a magnificent being. In fact, I used to hear the saying, we're magnificent beings just trying to be okay. The scapegoat is often, what gets them in trouble is being the blunt truth teller. They may be the first one into recovery as an act of rebellion. I'm not going to be like you. If they don't recover from their anger will often rule them. So anger is hurt. So within the scapegoat, they often take the blame, especially for truth-telling, and they'll act out in rebellion. I'm back. So often in society, the truth tellers get targeted. And that's also one of the conditions of an addictive organization or addictive society. Who tells the truth and who gets in trouble for it? They will crucify your ass for telling the truth. Watch out for them, Romans. So, lost child copes with withdrawing into a private world. In classroom, they're invisible, the kid that nobody sees. Their strengths are a vivid imagination. They have a rich inner world. They are keen observers of reality. They can be authors, artists, because of that imagination. The family mascot or clown copes with stress by laughter, light and seriousness. People like, as I've mentioned, Richard Pryor, Carol Burnett, Titus, among others.
So can these roles be changed even if you're not like the
You
first child?
anticipated like the next slide. Okay, so these roles can appear by birth order. They can appear all in one person over the person's lifespan. They can change over a person's lifespan. So we've seen like scapegoats become heroes and family heroes become scapegoats. Yeah. And remember, these can appear without addiction in any stressor as a response. You can actually have social ones.
What do you mean?
So those of us, in the field, not only in addictions field, but like ethnic studies, or also where ethnic studies interfaces with psychology. So in like black psychology, We study racism. We have a science about how it develops. But because Western psychology doesn't believe that racism exists, literally, like it has no psychological impact at all as far as Western psychology is. So to talk about it like there's a psychological and emotional impact, you're crazy, according to Western psychology. So we developed our own psychology that says, okay, discrimination exists, all right? But we become the scapegoats in an addictive society for saying that, look, it's not only us that has the problem here, it's you, because you're depending on this false sense of superiority. We're equal. So you get in trouble for saying, we're equal. So we become scapegoats, especially in a certain context. So women will experience the same thing by saying, oh, there's sexism. And men say, no, there's not. You're being emotional. Black women, oh, you're racist and sexist. You're just playing the race card and being emotional. No. Why am we doing the same work and your paycheck is larger? Because you stand to pee? Oh, you see, I mean, so you could actually look, depending on whose science you're going with, and so you're stuck with me. So it's not just my opinion, there's actually literature to back this up in terms of psychology as well. Systemic discrimination, right? Gay and lesbians don't have to talk about heterosexism or homophobia. It's real, right? Do we need the World Health Organization and the American Psychological Association to sign off on it? They did already. It's science. It's settled, right? Discrimination exists. So these kind of roles, if you're having a relationship to a larger society, you can get in trouble for telling the truth, depending. So they can appear without chemical abuse and in presence of environmental stress. So without active recovery, these people will become chemically dependent or die of stress-related diseases. Enter relationships with chemically dependent people, duplicate their roles in future families, communities, and the workplace. So as an example, we know with gay youth, they have the highest rates of suicide because there's usually not a resource for them to talk about their experiences or their sense of alienation. And the role models will often be, so they'll often self-medicate those feelings and replicate a lot of these roles as well. So when I say die of stress-related diseases, you can understand somebody might kill themselves to get away from the stress. So that's a code for that. You don't have to die, you don't have to suicide, but suicide is often a symptom of extreme stress. And this last piece, duplicate their roles in future families, communities, and the workplace. So they begin modifying the field around them to replicate what they experience as normal in their families, in the larger workplace. And people start following this. Take, for example, I'm not being deliberately partisan on election day, but Maureen Reagan, Ronald Reagan's daughter, said he's a child of an alcoholic. Now, as a child of an alcoholic, what do you collect around you if you're president of the United States? People that agree with your view or not, politically or not. So if he says, I remember this because I was in LA when he said it, on the day of the worst historical smog break in Los Angeles, he said, and I quote, when he was governor, they completely eliminated the smog problem in California. And he said that on the day of the worst historical smog break. And the next day he said, trees make more smog than cars. Uh-huh.
What?
Huh? Reagan said trees make more smog than cars. Really? And Edwin Meese, his Attorney General, when there was already 2 million homeless people on the street, said the homeless are anecdotal. They don't exist. It's just a story. Don't even get me about George W. Bush, who was exposed to alcohol in the womb and has fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, which also means you're going to tend to drink yourself. Kennedy's